Tonight, hopeful notes.
I believe we'll have the vaccine before the end of the year.
A COVID vaccine in the works and good news on the job front. All against the backdrop of a new record high death toll in the United States and the politics of faith.
The evangelicals who are going to vote for Joe Biden are those who have sold their soul to the devil.
Joe Biden's uphill battle courting the evangelical vote. Plus,
I did more for the black community than anybody with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln.
The president touting his achievements on criminal justice and prison reform. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Deadlock on Capitol Hill. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. It is an all too familiar phrase, this time the refrain over the next round of coronavirus relief. With the Senate out today, negotiations likely will spill into next week, and now President Trump is threatening to intervene unilaterally. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us now. Ben, what option is the president weighing?
Well, John, he is weighing the executive order action. In fact, we just found out that Republicans and Democrats could not come to a deal. So Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin is recommending to President Trump for that executive order. But it is unclear if an EO can help fix this problem.
As U.S. COVID cases approach 5 million and deaths hit more than 160,000, some good news begins to emerge. Reports of new cases went down nationwide by more than 10% this week. To top that, President Trump says he is optimistic a vaccine could be ready by Election Day.
I believe we'll have the vaccine before the end of the year, certainly, but around that date, yes, I think so.
Another major ongoing subject is testing, which is facing growing questions about accuracy. Case in point, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. Before meeting with Trump on Thursday, DeWine had to put on the brakes because of a positive test. Shortly afterward, though, he received a negative result at a nearby hospital.
Everyone who sees the president is tested, so I was tested. I went from there to the airport, and when I got to the airport, found out shortly thereafter that I had tested positive. So that was a big surprise.
DeWine later tweeted, "We do not have much experience with antigen tests here in Ohio. We will be working with the manufacturer to have a better understanding of how the discrepancy between the two tests could have occurred." But today, Trump's focus was on the latest unemployment numbers, which fell to 10.2%. Trump tweeted, "Great job numbers," despite the U.S. job growth slowing to 1.8 million in July.
Now, the debate to open schools could impact the job numbers, while some are forced to being choose on whether to stay home or possibly go back to work. Also today, we did find out from New York Governor Andrew Cuomo that he announced that all schools can open statewide. John?
All right, CBN's Ben Kennedy. Thank you, Ben. Well, we're now a little less than 3 months away from the presidential election, and it feels like we're in the middle of a bit of a holy war as the campaigns battle over the faith vote. Joe Biden is launching a direct appeal, hoping to blunt the GOP narrative that he is not a man of God. CBN's Eric Phillips joins us now with more on this fight for the faithful. Eric?
Well, John, it's certainly a battle for believers, isn't it? The Trump campaign taking their message last night to Las Vegas in the form of an Evangelicals for Trump event. At the same time, the Biden campaign was holding an online event of its own, complete with prayer and passionate speeches.
Billed as a Believers for Biden national call to action, Dr. Jill Biden emphasized her husband's spiritual convictions while delivering a message of unity.
His faith is unshakable because it's in the providence of God. If you turn on the news, you will often hear that our nation is more divided than ever. The truth is that our differences are precious and our similarities are infinite.
A panel of spiritual leaders explained why people of all faiths should support a Biden candidacy.
My Christian faith has been hijacked. And for those of us who are Christian, it really is an opportunity to clearly state, do we really believe in the gospel of Jesus, or are we just pretending?
Only hours before, the president gave his depiction of what a Biden White House would do.
Destroy your Second Amendment, No religion, no anything. Hurt the Bible, hurt God.
Biden fired off a response saying in part, for President Trump, to attack my faith is shameful. President Trump's decision to profane God and to smear my faith in a political attack is a stark reminder of what the stakes of this fight truly are. Trump saw strong evangelical support in 2016, and his campaign is trying to ensure that Democrats' efforts don't erode that.
The only evangelicals who are going to vote for Joe Biden are those who have sold their soul to the devil and accepted the Democrats' barbaric position on abortion.
Vice President Mike Pence telling CBN News,
Joe Biden would support public funding of abortions. I just think that the choice in this election has never been clearer.
The Biden campaign hoping to clearly convince evangelicals to make a different choice than 4 years ago.
We believe that evangelicals and Catholics are having a call come home to Jesus moment, and beginning to realize that Donald Trump is not a person of faith, not a person of God.
The Biden campaign continues to hold these meetings, they say, in the run-up to the election. These believers' meetings will become a part of their regular campaign activity because they understand that winning even a small percentage of evangelicals can make all the difference. John.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Well, here now for our Friday Faith Nation political panel, Julia Manchester, our trusty regular political reporter from The Hill, and Jack Jenkins, national reporter for Religion News Service. Julia, Jack, great to have you this afternoon. Jack, to you first. On the politics of faith, the president is attacking Joe Biden's Catholic bona fides, saying he'll hurt the Bible and he'll hurt God. Could this potentially backfire?
Well, it's certainly a risky move by the president. I mean, to be clear, Trump has said things like this before, kind of cast Democrats as against God or against religion. And he's probably speaking primarily to people who already support Trump, these evangelicals who are already probably going to show up for him on Election Day. But specifically attacking Biden's faith, calls a contrast between Trump and the former vice president that the Biden camp thinks, only benefits Biden. I mean, Biden is someone who has never been shy about talking about faith. He often literally wears it on his sleeve. He walks around with a rosary that was given to him by his late son, Beau. And even earlier this week, when the Trump campaign put out an advertisement to try to cast Biden as someone who is in a bunker during this pandemic, they had to alter images to be able to put out that advertisement. And one of the images they used in the ad was an altered image of Biden in prayer in a church. And so, from the Biden camp's perspective, this contrast only benefits the former vice president, given his long history of talking about faith in public.
Julia, what did you make of the president's attack?
I think this is definitely an attempt by the president to try to rally his base. Remember, back in 2016, President Trump really tried to position himself as the candidate of faith and specifically trying to attract, evangelicals and such. So I think with Vice President Joe Biden, this back and forth on his faith and, this back and forth between Joe Biden and President Trump, this is about President Trump trying to solidify that faith vote. However, I think Joe Biden, I think the left and, those in the Biden camp know that they probably aren't going to win a majority of the evangelical vote, if not a big portion of the vote. So I think they are going to continue to, look ahead and focus on those voters that they know are going to come out for them in November.
Let's stick on the topic of Joe Biden. He is in hot water after another gaffe, this time after trying to draw a distinction between the diversity of African Americans and Latinos. Let's take a listen and then come back on the other end.
And by the way, what you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things.
Julia, he tried to clean it up later. How did he do?
He's still getting a lot of criticism from members of the African American community, but especially conservatives and Republicans. It's interesting looking at the span of this week. We started out with President Trump's interview with Axios's Jonathan Swan really dominating the campaign news cycle. And I think you saw the Biden campaign kind of sit back and let them dominate it. That all changed, though, when Joe Biden went on CBS News and he was asked by a reporter whether he had taken a cognitive test. And And then he got testy with the reporter, and in fact, asked the reporter if, sarcastically, if, whether he would take a drug test or whatever before giving an interview. So that started to dominate the campaign news cycle. And now you have this. The Biden campaign does not want to having to do this cleanup right now.
Jack, I want to ask you about the coronavirus relief bill. We know that there is a large component, at least for Nancy Pelosi, saying that this is a moral obligation. Is this deal dead in the water?
It looks like there's still some significant ideological differences. I mean, you have the two different parties prioritizing different things in this bill. I mean, it's also worth noting, while it is an ideological difference, it is somewhat of a theological distinction as well. I mean, just yesterday, Nancy Pelosi was quoting Matthew 25, saying that Republicans are failing to meet Christ's call to feed the hungry and, take care of the needy. So, again, with Democrats trying to prioritize giving relief to the lower income folks who might be evicted and things like that, it might be a logjam for a few days to come.
All right, Jack and Julia, thank you so much. We hope you both have a great weekend. Well, coming up, among the president's major legislative accomplishments, the First Step Act. Up next, our interview with the White House re-entry czar on criminal justice and prison reform.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Welcome back. Tonight, the president is touting his administration's signature achievement on criminal justice and prison reform as evidence of how much he's done for African Americans. The president is also pointing to jobs in the economy, suggesting he's delivered more compared to any other president.
I got opportunity zones. I took care of the historically black. If you look at what I've done for colleges, for black colleges and universities, I got them funding. Obama never did it. I did more for the black community than anybody, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln, whether you like it or not. People say, "Oh, that's interesting."
You believe you did more than Lyndon Johnson, who passed the Civil Rights Act?
I think I did, yeah.
How?
Because I got criminal justice reform done.
And here with us now is Tony Loudon, White House re-entry czar, charged with implementing the First Step Act and helping former prisoners re-enter the workforce. Tony, thank you for being with us, and I hope you don't mind if I just call you Pastor throughout this interview.
I'm fine. If you want to call me Tony John, you can do that as well.
All right. Well, first off, your take on that sound we just played, the president's claim that he's done more for African Americans than any other president, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln.
Listen, when you think about what he's done with criminal justice reform, where in when he first came in office in 2016, the number of people that we had in our prisons were 200-something thousand in the federal prisons. Now that number is down to 158,000, and majority of them was African Americans. A lot of African Americans have left our federal facilities and gone home to be reunited with their families under this president. If you look at opportunity zones, taking communities where, like I grew up in North Philadelphia. I was just in Wilmington, Delaware the other day, which is only a half an hour away from North Philadelphia. It's one of the most impoverished neighborhoods in our community. Gangs running all over the place. Children trapped and failing schools. Churches are having the opportunity to they're burying more people than they're marrying people. This president created opportunity zones, and those opportunity zones are changing lives.
I take it that's an answer of a yes. You do agree that he's done a lot to support African Americans.
Absolutely. The numbers don't lie.
All right. Well, you know, you had mentioned Delaware. Lately, Joe Biden's work on the 1994 crime bill has come under scrutiny. Now, as America incarcerates more than any other country in the world, how much did that law contribute to the mass incarceration we're experiencing today?
You ask anybody across the nation, when they had that crime bill during that time and what they did, it contributed to mass incarceration in great numbers. You can't run away from that. The numbers don't lie and the videos don't lie.
You know, I've done a lot of reporting on prison and reentry, and the problem with recidivism is that there are so many layers that make successful reentry difficult, structurally, educationally, behaviorally, and not just on the prisoner side, but when it comes to the attitudes of employers and everyday Americans. How do we work on changing public perception towards ex-inmates who deserve their second chance?
Well, we're going to lead. This administration is leading. And so today, just a few minutes ago, every secretary under President Trump's administration was sitting in the Situation Room, and we were talking about those very things. Reentry don't start once a person get out. It starts on the inside of the prison. Taking HHS and bringing them on the inside and dealing with mental health, dealing with individuals that need counseling. But more importantly, you think about this here. We have 180,000 men and women in our prisons who are veterans, who've come home from all our wars. And they come home, they traumatized because of what they've done defending No Glory. And now they find themselves, because they did not make a smooth transition, in our prisons.
Real quickly, we only have about a minute left. I got to ask you, Pastor, when you accepted the call to preach, you probably never imagined pastoring Jimmy Carter at Maranatha Baptist Church or working with the White House on prisoner reentry. Can you share what you've learned about second acts and faithfully following God's call wherever he leads?
You know, we as Christian believers, we have to, die to self, as Paul would say. And when God calls us to do something, fall in line to do that. Now, I received a lot of people sent me hate mail because I took a position as a conservative and go work with Pastor Jimmy Carter when he called me to pastor his church. And then I received a lot of hate mail from people that said, you shouldn't be working with President Trump. But God has blessed me to be able to work with both presidents at the same time, to be able to counsel both of them, working with one spiritually as he gets ready to go home, and working with one who's working day to day to try to make America better. It's been a blessing. I believe without a shadow of a doubt that God's called the faith community to do more and to do the same thing that I'm doing in the position that I am, to be able to tell America and tell those servant leaders who are supposed to serve our public what a servant leader looks like with a servant heart.
A powerful and timely word to end on. Tony Loudon, Executive Director of the Federal Interagency Council on Crime Prevention and Reentry. Pastor, we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. To God be the glory.
When we come back, a new study reveals how COVID-19 restrictions have affected churchgoers and worship habits across the country. You're watching CBN's Faith Nation.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
Welcome back. Tonight, a new study shows most Americans support the precautionary guidelines churches and houses of worship have taken to prevent the spread of COVID-19. According to a Pew Research Center survey out today, 8 in 10 Americans say churches should follow the same rules about social distancing and large gatherings as any other business or organization. Among Christians in the United States, 3/4 say houses of worship should operate under those same conditions. Evangelical Protestants support giving churches more flexibility, though according to the study, a 62% majority say they do support restrictions. And here with us now is Greg Smith, Associate Director of Religion Research at the Pew Research Center. Greg, it's great to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Greg, tell us about this survey. What surprised you most about the results?
You know, we asked people a variety of questions about the way the coronavirus outbreak has affected their own worship habits and their views about what kinds of things they think should be taking place in their own congregations. I think what was most striking to me in this era where the public is divided on many topics is that there's broad agreement among the American public that churches and other houses of worship should be subject to the same coronavirus-related restrictions as other establishments in their area. There's really not much support for the idea of allowing churches more flexibility when it comes to things like social distancing and wearing masks and limitations on large events. That was very striking to me, especially in this era of partisan polarization.
Greg, how do your findings comport to the more brazen acts of religious defiance we've seen, whether it's a pastor deciding to hold worship services in Florida, Louisiana, or against the governor's order there in Florida, or even what we saw last night in Nevada, where people worshiped in a casino to highlight the fact that casinos can be open in Nevada, but not churches?
Yeah, the data can't speak to public opinion in any particular local area in the country, but nationwide, what we see is that the vast majority of religious attenders are not comfortable with the idea of operating business as usual in their congregations. 3 in 10 religious attenders tell us that they think their congregation should be closed altogether. There should be no in-person services held there at all. Almost 6 in 10 tell us they're comfortable with the idea of their congregation holding services, but only with certain restrictions in place, things like social distancing, requiring masks, limiting the number of people who can attend at any one time. Only about 1 in 10 religious attenders tell us they'd be comfortable with their congregation operating as normal, just as it did before the outbreak. That's really a minority position.
You had mentioned earlier about changing worship habits. Can you delve a little more deeply how the pandemic has affected Americans' worship habits?
Well, so far we've seen a real decline in recent months in the share of people who say they're attending religious services in person. Among those who say they normally attend religious services at least once a month, only 1/3 have actually done so in the past month. Rather, what many people are doing is replacing that in-person attendance with watching religious services online or on TV instead. Of course, the survey can't predict the future, but we did ask people how they anticipate their religious habits changing once the outbreak is over. And by and large, people tell us that once the outbreak is over, they want to get back to normal. They intend to resume the religious attendance patterns that they had before the outbreak occurred.
All right, Greg Smith with the Pew Research Center. Greg, thanks so much for your time and your insights.
Thank you again for having me.
Coming up, the role of a lifetime for a fan of one of the world's most popular trending shows. We take you behind the scenes next.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
For impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religion he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
And finally tonight, a crowd-funded series about the life of Christ has captured the hearts of millions across the world, but one young fan was actually chosen to play a part. Kaylin Reese was asked to play the cello for an important scene in the show, The Chosen, after sending a letter to the director expressing her connection to the show.
Blessed are all who take refuge in Him.
13-year-old Kaylin was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome as a child and related to the quirks of the character Matthew. Director Dallas Jenkins said allowing Kaylin to play a part goes to the heart of the show, which invites viewers to participate in the orchestration of God's beauty in the earth. Well, thank you so much for watching Faith Nation. We hope you have a great and safe weekend.